Hello, welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk Alien. Let's talk the Alien series from Noah Hawley. I thought I'd revisit this piece of information and sort of analyse it a little bit more. This was a recent discussion with Vanity Fair, all about Fargo. And then obviously Noah Hawley proceeded to reveal a whole bunch of stuff about Alien. I initially reported on it and was like, yeah, this is interesting. Don't really see this, don't really see that. Some of this dialogue here, a little bit of an issue, but you know, by and large, it was pretty down the line on it all. And I thought I would just go back to it, basically. Just go back to it, have another fresh discussion, and look at it with some fresh eyes on whether this is going to cause any issues moving forwards for the series on a whole. So what do we know about this series, outside of what I'm going to tell you moving forwards now? We know that it was going to be set on Earth anyway, or at the very least in the not too distant future on Earth. That's what they said at the Disney Investor Day. And when they said that, that initial report there was concerning, and not concerning from the perspective of the setting, the time, anything like that. That's fine, but it was somewhat concerning when you try to line it up with canon. And like this word's thrown around quite a lot, and that just means like the lore, the in-universe timeline, what people believe to be the history of the universe, canon. And that flies in the face of that, and that was concerning straight from the off, mainly because it's Disney that are saying this, and when they start to disregard canon, you end up with things like Star Wars and everything else. So that was a little bit of a red flag right there. Not too distant future on Earth. Well, in the not too distant future, we hadn't ever come into contact with xenomorphs at that point in the Alien canon, so that would have been a problem. And then we have this new interview. Now, Noah Hawley's really, really good. He's created some fantastic stuff. Legion, Fargo, great works. Really, really, really good works, in fact. And I have a lot of confidence in him, in this, and in how this could come across really, really well. But this was the interview that was dropped. This was the release. What's next for you? Is there a season 5 in the works for Fargo? And Noah Hawley would respond, said, yeah, I think so. I don't have it yet. I have pieces that will have to survive. They're not connected. I think it would be good to create an ending and deliberately come to something, knowing it's the last one, and see how one might wrap up this anthology. What's next for me? It looks like is an Alien series for FX, taking on that franchise and those amazing films by Ridley Scott, James Cameron and David Fincher. Those are great monster movies, but they're not just monster movies. They're about humanity trapped between our primordial parasitic past and our artificial intelligence future, and they're both trying to kill us. Here you have human beings, and they can't go forward and they can't go back. So I find that really interesting. So, and I'm still, whenever I look at this as a piece of news and a piece of information, that still always confuses me, this whole parasitic past situation. And that because it's so broad and it's so open, but in the context of the Alien universe, there wasn't that much of a parasitic past. Not until you move far forward into the future. The not too distant future, there wasn't really anything. And then we know without a shadow of a doubt anyway, because Disney is trying to court Ridley Scott to do executive producing on this, the whole artificial intelligence element there is very much Noah Hawley trying to pay respect to Ridley Scott. So when we're having this discussion of whether the series is going to be good or not, you have to analyse these things, because the artificial intelligence, although it was an important element of the Alien series, it was never the artificial intelligence of our future that's trying to kill us, right? That was never a thing, realistically, until Ridley Scott started to take control of it with Prometheus and then Alien Covenant. Yeah, sure, you had Ash in the first one, but then you had Bishop, and Bishop was fantastic. There was no issue with Bishop. And then you had Cal at the end of, Resurrection. So in terms of the artificial intelligence, that's definitely Noah Hawley signalling, hey, Ridley Scott, we are being respectful to you, good sir. Please sign on with Disney. And then that starts to throw another red flag. Concerning, because of course if Ridley Scott has any creative control, then yeah, maybe it's going to wind up a little bit, in less quality than what Noah Hawley could be doing just solely as Noah Hawley. And I don't think that's too much of a stretch. I don't think that's too disrespectful to say. Regardless, there are some people which, of course, really like those films. I myself quite like Prometheus, but Alien Covenant falls apart and just throws things way off the deep end. Again, no disrespect if anyone likes that film, but there'll be a large portion of people that will go, no thanks, no thanks. And anyway, so here we get to the discussion of where was Noah Hawley in that process at the time of this article, which was about the 1st of July, if I remember rightly. And he says that I've written a couple of scripts, and the first 2 scripts, and we're looking to make them next spring. When you get to something with this level of visual effects, there's a lot of preparation that has to go into it. Now, that right there is just the timeline signaled to you. He literally says, when you have something with this many visual effects, so it's going to have a lot of special effects, a lot of visual effects, you have to be prepared for it. He's going to look to shoot it next spring. When's that going to come out? Well, quite a while, because the visual effects, they take a long time. And he's literally saying right there and then with this level of visual effects. Now he's saying obviously what's really been illuminating to see is that the entire film industry had to take a year off, and they're now trying to jam 2 years of production into 1 year. And then just discussing how difficult it is, basically. How hard it is going to be to do all of that, which makes perfect sense. It is going to be quite difficult. Nothing really to dive into there outside of what we'd already covered just with the timeline. Visual effects heavy, which is quite good, quite promising. I'd like it to be a little bit more low-key with more costumes, but it doesn't really matter. Now he says, Vanity Fair, says, is there anything else that you can share about it? Is it a part of the Ripley story, or will it be original characters in a different time and place? And this is what seemed to be reported as news. This wasn't news. It's not a Ripley story. She's one of the great characters of all time, and I think the story has been told pretty perfectly, and I don't want to mess with it. It's a story that's set on Earth also. The alien stories are always trapped in a prison, trapped in a spaceship. I thought it would be interesting to open it up a little bit so that the stakes of what happens if you can't contain it are more immediate. Now, just that answer there, good. It's a good answer. I quite like that. But this is not new. We knew that it was going to be set in the not too distant future. Anyway, that automatically removes Ripley from the equation. But what I really do hope is that they avoid doing any of like Ripley's, I don't know, ancient relatives, because goddamn would that just be really, really sad. And I don't think Noah Hawley would be the person that would fall into that trap, but that will by the by. Now, in terms of the what happens if you can't contain it are more immediate, that's an interesting one, because then it goes on to what Vanity Fair starts to move forward with, and they start to relate it to COVID. Deadly things that can't be contained and the whole world at risk. Sounds relevant to the past year. I really hope this does not become an allegory for coronavirus. God, I really hope it doesn't. Please, contain yourself, Hollywood. Let's not just have everything be an allegory for coronavirus. It's not all that. People are sick of it. Just don't do it. Now, anyway, his response is, this was the main thing that I took some umbrage over. And he says, on some level, it's also a story about inequality, you know? One of the things that I love about the first movie is how 70s a movie it is, and how it's really this blue-collar space trucker world in which Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton are basically waiting for Godot. They're like Samuel Beckett characters ordered to go to a place by a faceless, nameless corporation. The second movie is such an 80s movie, but it's still got about grunts. Paul Reiser is middle management at best, so it is the story of the people you send to do the dirty work. And it was, to a certain degree it was. These movies have always been about the company. The nameless company, well, it's not the nameless company, but the faceless company. Weyland-Yutani, although not really faceless, because in Aliens we do see some management work in there, but they have always been about a company power structure and the desire to mine things for profit moving forwards, and it makes sense. But I don't think it was about inequality specifically. That's where I think that there's some skewed element there. They're talking about capitalism, sure, but I don't think it was realistically about inequality. You can have something about capitalism which is not about inequality. Now, obviously, Vanity Fair asked, how does that relate to your series? And he replied, in mine, you're also going to see the people who are sending them. So you will see what happens when the inequality we're struggling with now isn't resolved. If we as a society can't figure out how to prop each other up and spread the wealth, then what's going to happen to us? There's that great Sigourney Weaver line to Paul Reiser where she says, "I don't know which species is worst. At least they don't fuck each other over for a percentage," which is a great line, quite iconic. Jasper cameo. So in terms of how these kind of elements pertain to the series and how it's sort of, I guess, going to look moving forwards, sadly, I do think that they're taking a leaf from the Marvel Comics book, which is, they're taking the whole capitalism, workers, and that sort of element there and moving it a step further towards like Antifa against the capitalist structure, and then obviously, from that level of the perspective of inequality from that level. And I sincerely hope that that's not what Noah Hawley does. I really, really hope it isn't what he does. He doesn't really have a track record of doing those kind of things. But in his description of Alien, calling it about inequality and things like that, I would never say that employees working for a company is about inequality. I would say that that's just, people doing their job, and then that's sort of falling on them when capitalism sort of has, a massive element of greed moving forwards. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But in terms of should we be concerned and is it going to be any good, Noah Hawley has a very, very good track record. I think he will be very, very good on this. The things which concern me the most, and obviously I'm going to be asking you guys what concerns you the most about this, if anything, because you guys might hear this and go, absolutely perfect, no worries at all. But the things that concern me the most are actually just the not too distant future. So the wiping of canon massively, and just that key element there of focusing, I guess, away from, if you're focusing just on inequality rather than the capitalist structure of the company, I think that's where it could fall apart, because that could come across preachy. Most people that work for a company can appreciate the whole line of, well, at least they don't fuck each other over for a percentage. That's something which most people can go, oh yeah, no, I respect that, like I can understand that. But if you then move it way past that sort of element and into the inequality part, so that is where you can come across a little bit preachy. Sorry, there'll be an outtake at the end of this, hence why I'm a little bit flustered. You'll watch that outtake and you'll have a good laugh. Anyway, guys, please do let me know what you think of all of this down below in the comment section. I'm not trying to cover old ground. I just feel this is worth another look at, and obviously worth getting your guys' opinion on as well. So please do let me know what you think down below. If you're new here, do hit subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care. You start to sound preachy, and I think that